In the last episode, we spent some time exploring Harpers Ferry as we were recovering from our rather strenuous rafting trip on the river down there. So we took some time and walked around to explore the bridges and the famous church up on the hill with this great view of the water. And then we headed back to the campsite to pack up the Scamp. And the next day we were on our way toward Virginia. Our next stop was Shenandoah National Park, but since we were so close to Antietam Battlefield and Patrick really likes history, we decided to make a stop on our way down and check out Antietam. We also found out that there was a driving trail that went around the battlefield, and we figured since the Scamp is small enough, we could probably make it work. The scenery alone in this area could have made this little side trip worth it. Beautiful farms. This is a great part of Maryland. When we got to the visitor center for Antietam, we were very happy to see that they had bus and RV parking, and we got really excited because we parked right next to this casita. It's nice when you see another fiberglass trailer on the road, like our little twin. So we headed into the visitor center and we had really good timing.
Yeah, it's all self-guided, so you can... Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started.
One of the rangers did a great talk about the Battle of Antietam and explained how this battle was the bloodiest day in American military history. By the end of the battle, there were 23,000 soldiers who were either killed, wounded, or missing. It's hard to imagine that looking out at this absolutely beautiful farm in an area that now feels so peaceful. There were areas of the battlefield that were literally soaked in blood from the injuries and the deaths from all of these soldiers. This marks a time in American history where photography was first used to document what was happening on battlefields. Before then, there were no images that the public was able to see to really understand what was happening. It was all just written or things that they had heard. So this really brought a different element of horror to what was happening in these battles.
In 12 hours, every 2 seconds somebody died.
23,000 people?
23 sets, yes, and more and more. You know. Every person that grabbed that flag, you're dead.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm grabbing the flag, I'm going to be dead.
Target.
2 seconds.
The Dunker Church is one of the most famous parts of the Antietam National Battlefield. This was a building that was built on a foundation of peace, and this building ended up being an integral part of the battle, and eventually was used to give aid to soldiers that were injured or to embalm the bodies of those that had been killed in the battle. Much of the church was destroyed during the battle, and this is a reconstruction that you can walk through. It gives you a good sense of what buildings were like during that time period. Very simple. Across the grounds and in the small museum that they have inside the visitor center, they have a really good collection of original artifacts from the battle. This part explains how many of the trees that you can see in pictures from the battle you can still identify in the fields today. And they call these witness trees because they were standing throughout the whole process of the battle and watching the dead being buried, and still here today to watch everything that unfolds. Battlefield medicine was very primitive at this time, so few of the soldiers who were injured actually survived. This shows a shovel that was used to bury the dead and a plank that was pulled off of the top of Burnside Bridge to mark a gravesite. When we walked outside, we realized that the flag was at half staff, and we hadn't thought about it, but today was September 11th, so it was an interesting day that we had ended up picking to do something related to our country's history. Antietam has a self-guided driving tour that goes through all of the different fields and stops at some of the main points of interest throughout the property. This tour would be worth it just for the beautiful scenery, but there are so many interesting places that you can stop, and if you've seen any of our other videos, you know that I love old cemeteries. So the first place that we stopped was the cemetery from one of the families who owned some of the property that the battle actually took place on. We were here in September on a weekday, so you can see that it really wasn't very crowded, and we were lucky because I have a feeling this looks very different in the summer, or especially on the weekend in the summer. But since it was so quiet, we were able to do the full driving tour with the Scamp in tow, and we were able to park with no problem. The last place that we wanted to see before we left Antietam National Battlefield was the Burnside Bridge. One of the really famous battles that happened at Antietam was over this bridge. The bridge is in excellent condition right now, and the reason for that is the National Park Service actually did a 15-month restoration of the bridge after part of the bridge collapsed and fell into the river. A team came in and spent 15 months taking the bridge apart, painstakingly mapping where the stones were, and then putting everything back together exactly the way that it was before. Pretty amazing. By this point, we had already spent more time at Antietam than we were originally planning to. We were really just going to stop quickly and check it out, but there were so many interesting things that we ended up spending a few hours, and by this time we were pretty hungry, and that's when we realized that we had the Scamp with us, and we had a fridge full of food and all sorts of things that we could stop and enjoy before we had to finish making the long drive into Virginia and Shenandoah National Park. See how much of a mess it is. Yeah, not bad. We didn't make our bed, but oh, it's hot. This morning I made some shrimp salad and put it in the fridge, and then I grabbed tortillas and spinach. And luckily the parking lot's not that full and we're starving, so we figured we would just real quick eat before we keep going on to Shenandoah. So shrimp salad wraps. Pretty good. That was a good lunch.
Yeah, all fueled up.
Okay.
Good time to come. Nobody here.
Oh yeah.
No buses.
I think today we're really starting to understand the advantages of having the Scamp with us. We were planning on just stopping at Antietam to like check it out for, you know, a couple minutes because we were so close, and ended up spending way more time there than we were expecting. It's like 2:20 right now, we just left. But after a while of walking around and checking everything out, we were starving because we didn't really eat breakfast today, and we had to go to the bathroom. And as you're walking around, there's really nothing. Once you leave the visitor center, you're just like out in the open fields. So luckily we had the RV parking at the, what was that, right by the
bridge.
The bridge.
Yeah.
And there was nobody else there, so we figured we would just stop for a quick lunch and use the bathroom, and now we're on our way to Shenandoah. Comfortable and happy and well fed, so it makes such a difference in the enjoyment level and how long you feel comfortable staying at places, because we had food with us and we were able to make lunch. We didn't have to run out and try to get food somewhere, so pretty neat.
Yeah, definitely.